wanted to share with you a few of the things that we have learned eating from close to home for a month. We've been eating from within the UK. You can watch another video, I'll link it, on why we decided to do this, why we set ourselves this challenge. But we're a few weeks in, we have learned a lot, and I wanted to share some of those things.
I'm Kezia, mum, wife, blogger, author, 5am coffee drinker. I wear a lot of hats, and in all my roles and here on the internet, my goal is to make a lower footprint life a little less complicated.
I'm drinking coffee, which is the one thing that we allowed in as a food product that doesn't grow in England, because it really doesn't. We didn't learn that it does. Some of these points are more general ones about the idea of doing this challenge. Some are more specific to where we are, but I hope that it's interesting to listen to. Lots of people have been intrigued or said that they've wanted to try something like this. I will say we are going to do a full budget breakdown right at the end when I know exactly what we spent on what, but we will cover a little point about budget in this as well. So let's dive in to point number one. This comes as no surprise that marketing is very sneaky. I found that there were more products than I thought that said English something or a name of somewhere close to us, farm. And then when I dug in, the ingredients were actually coming from a long way away, or in part were coming from a long way away. So I learned you have to really look for 100%, where you are grown vegetables or things like that, or dig more into maybe the About Us page on a website and look into the company and see what they're saying about exactly where their things are coming from. I found farms that talked about all the things they did on their farm and all the practices they implemented on their farm, but then actually a lot of the foods that we were eating were being brought in from further away and maybe put in a box on the farm. So if we're wanting to reduce food miles, we just want to be exactly aware of where the ingredients are coming from. Next discovery was the kids. So I've got a 1, 4, and 6-year-old. The 1-year-old obviously had no idea what we were doing, but my 4 and 6-year-old were really old enough to grasp what we were doing and to have an appreciation for it. Also to have negative feelings when they realized we weren't going to have chocolate for a month. But then they really got on board. My 4-year-old girl went around telling people, we're not eating chocolate for a month, we're just eating English food. And they're familiar with the idea of thinking about where our food comes from. They know that we don't eat chocolate, that is not fairly traded, or if we don't know, we don't eat it. And so they're familiar with the idea of thinking about the impact before it gets to our homes. This was hitting that from another angle. And we also got to celebrate some things together and think about the people that had produced our food. It also became much more fun when we did find things. So we made marshmallows with UK gelatin and sugar grown here. We'll come back to that. And it was such a win and a fun moment together, and actually pretty cost-effective thing to do. And then we sat and we cracked a ton of nuts together. We had some really fun experiences that they were really able to celebrate as being part of eating close to home and what we were doing and not using fuel and things like that. So 4 and 6 is well old enough to understand the challenge. Next point, as I made my meal plan, you have to kind of turn on your head the way that I think a lot of us make our meal plans, which is, what do we want to eat? What meals do we want to make? Okay, what things do we need to make those meals? That's how most people meal plan, I think. What I really had to do was go, okay, what can we get? And then how can we turn that into a meal? So I think for a lot of people, that's flipping on its head how we think about creating food. And so in this season, I was going, okay, we have a lot of squash. I can get wheat, and we can get organic cheese, we can get some meat, there's other veggies we can get, lots of Brussels sprouts and green beans. There isn't really much fruit apart from apples, and what are we going to create from that stuff? So you're just going, okay, what's available, what can we get on our budget, and then what can we make with it? You have to kind of turn that around to make it work. But once we had done that and looked at, okay, what basic products can we get, we then put together a few easy meals that we knew we could always have. We can always do mac and cheese. I can do sausages and roasted vegetables. I can do, a breakfast for dinner. And then I didn't have to be being creative the whole time, finding staples and then being creative when I had the energy. Next point, following right on from that, with a lot of kind of spices and flavorings and things we normally use taken away, soy sauce, cinnamon, vanilla, coconut oil, things that we might turn to create flavor and yummy things. With those taken away, there's a ton of flavor in other things, but it did make me realize that a lot of the time we are looking for the secret ingredient that makes this soup better than any other soup, or the the best ever cookie that someone's ever made, or a new way to do this. And I think in part that's come from the internet and from all kind of cooking in front of each other and competing for having the best recipe, or I did this a new way, or this is even better, or feeling like everything we eat needs to taste amazing. And it actually was a really good practice for us. A few times I said to the kids, yeah, this isn't special. Or we've taught them to say, instead of I hate that, but to say, that's not my favorite. And sometimes they would say, this isn't my favorite. And I'd go, that's fine. Not every meal is meant to be our favorite. It's okay. And then we'd celebrate some things about it. It all came from local, and it's what we had in our fridge, and it's what we're using, and it's going to fill your tummy to breakfast, and that's an amazing thing. Doesn't matter that it's not your favorite. Doesn't matter that it's not amazing. We can just take the food that we have and cook it, and that's enough. I think we can get far too focused on things having to taste good, and especially our kids going, I don't like this, and actually going, it's okay to have a meal that we don't love, and to eat it, and to realize and be grateful for it and where it came from and who made it. So that was a really good practice for us as a family, and maybe especially the kids. Okay, next point. I forgot that when we lived in California, I used to get food from Craigslist, which the English equivalent would be like Gumtree. And I would use it for fruit, especially when fruit was in season, and other things too. And people would sell off what they had trees in their garden, and they would sell off the extra that they had on Craigslist. Well, we tried to find nuts. Nuts, they do grow in England, but English grown nuts are not very available to purchase here. And we love nut butter. We run on nut butter. And so I tried to find some. And there are a few places that sell UK grown nuts seasonally. Obviously, they're a seasonal item. And then I remembered that, and I looked on eBay, and you can find walnuts and hazelnuts being sold on eBay by people who have trees in their garden, and they were a far better price if you do a little bit of searching. So reminder to check just local sellers who might have fruit, veg, nuts from their own garden and be selling it on a platform somewhere, to check the platforms that are available. We realized we needed less of the things we thought we needed. You can go without a lot of things. Yes, I kept coffee. Aside from that, I thought there would be more grumbling or counting down the days, and there just wasn't. England has a lot of food. It might be different. There might be things we go without, but really we just get into habits, and we can create new habits. So if you're nervous about doing it, thinking, but what are we going to do without that one thing? I knew we'd be fine. We had food on the table, but humans like habits, and humans like routine, and we like the things that are, make us feel a certain way. But habits can be changed. You do have to, I think, mentally embrace being okay with what's local. And I mean that in terms of, I think we're quite a globally eating community, especially those of us that see what other people eat online or on TV. We've become very accustomed to feeling like for nutrition or for happiness, we need foods from a lot of different places, and we need those things year round. And I think learning, obviously this is not nutrition advice, but that it's okay to work with what you have locally, and that's going to mean you have abundances of different things at different times of the year. Like no berries, there's no berries in this season. So I think I hear a lot of parents say, I can't, berries are so hard to budget for. Well, we don't eat berries like 11 months of the year. We didn't eat a ton of fruit in this challenge because there isn't a ton of fruit. There's apples and pears, and we didn't eat a ton of them, but we ate a lot more vegetables. We just embraced the fact that there's a lot more vegetables, and they were all starchy vegetables for the most part. There's a lot of squash and potatoes and carrots. And instead of going, I need something else, embracing what there is. And then in another season, there'll be an abundance of spinach and rocket, and we'll eat huge salads, and there'll be a lot of that. And we won't be eating so many of the starchy vegetables, but actually mentally choosing, I'm going to embrace what there is here in this season, and remember that actually I'm not eating globally, and that will mean a change. And I think it's helpful to first mentally kind of address that so that we can intentionally make different choices and be okay with them, rather than going, this plate is lacking, realizing, no, this plate is full of things that are available locally. It's actually not lacking. But if we're not going to eat globally, our plates are going to look different, and we need to kind of mentally embrace that and realize that at the start of the challenge. Okay, so this next point, you can do it on a budget, which always feels funny to say because a budget is anything. We did this on pretty much to the pound what the average English family of our size spends per week. which I was really surprised that was possible. I will do a full breakdown of budget, but I thought it was going to be a lot more expensive, and I wasn't trying to get our budget as small as possible. I could have done it on less. I was more focused on what we were buying and exploring companies, and we hit that average UK budget right on. So we definitely could have done it for a lot less if I hadn't bought nuts, things like that. So that was a fascinating discovery for me. Okay, and now a few more local ones. The most fascinating discovery to me was you can't buy organic English grown sugar. So in the UK, imported sugar is usually sugar cane. It comes from the cane, and that's the sugar that most of us are probably used to. Sugar grown in England comes from sugar beets, which are like big radishy, white radish looking things. You can press them, boil them down, and they make a syrup. But the only ones, we grow a lot of them in England. In England, we don't grow any organic ones, which was really interesting to me. But on Etsy, you can get organic sugar beet seeds, and I'm thinking about doing that for next season and just having a go at making our own organic UK grown sugar, having a go. Okay, a number of you messaged me and said, there is black tea in England. So this is true. There is black tea in England. It grows down in Cornwall. There is one estate doing it. However, going back to that marketing situation, most of their tea is then blended with tea from the other side of the world and sold as, English tea. They're not doing anything wrong. They're sticking to all the marketing rules. But when you really look at it, the sun just went in. When you really look at it, the only tea, wait for this, the only tea that is 100% grown in the UK, black tea this is £100 for 7 grams. Now, if you Google will tell you you need 2 grams of tea to make a cup of tea. I did email them and said, am I missing something here? And they said, we suggest 2 grams and you can brew it again and again. And the maximum has been 12 cups of tea from 2 grams of tea leaves. So then you're looking at about 40 cups of tea from 100 grams of tea, but that is the maximum. So we're still quite a high cost for that tea. And then if you spill it, can you imagine? Anyway, so that is the only tea grown in the UK. So there is no real, I would say, no hugely affordable caffeine that grows in the UK. I did, though, happily find, I thought we were going to be giving up pizza because in this season, there are no tomatoes really growing here. You can't really buy UK grown tomatoes in this season, so I couldn't make my own pizza sauce or anything like that. But in looking at how we could source different things, I found a great company on the Isle of Wight, and I will show you the jar. They are making on the, taking all that southern sun, and here, this is an example again of looking at how things are written, 100% organic Isle of Wight tomatoes. And that is actually a place where it has really saved us money. Their pizza sauce is very, very cost effective, and I now just have it on a standing order from them once a month. So that was a fantastic discovery. On the flip side, I discovered that a lot of the flour that I thought was grown in the UK is not grown in the UK. This is one of those places where a lot of the kind of localish looking farms talking about what they're doing growing on their farm are actually bringing in flour from many different places. I did find a number of mills in the UK that don't ship their flour, but you can go and collect it. So worth looking close to you. If you want to find a mill, you might be able to go and pick up flour. But Stoats was the one where I found, they were doing organically grown English wheat, milling it right there. And it was the most cost effective as well. Their bread flour, they told me, has a higher protein flour brought in from further away. But their non-bread flour, which is what I've been making my bread with, is all from England. And it did make it more expensive to make a loaf, but still less than buying it for a really great product. And lastly, I thought if we wanted yogurt, I was going to be making my own yogurt, which was going to come at probably too high of a cost and time, and I just wasn't going to do it. But I found that Yeo Valley make a yogurt in plastic, so I then wasn't going to get it. How do you weigh up these different things? That's a different video. But they have the first 100% recycled yogurt carton with UK milk made into yogurt. It's delicious. It is decently cost effective. It's very thick and filling and wonderful. And that is one that I will continue to buy. So that was a win there. So that was a really fun discovery, and I wouldn't have maybe known about that if I hadn't tried to dig into what options were more local. So that was a great discovery. So all in, I highly recommend doing a challenge like this. It's been fascinating to learn from organic sugar beets to tomatoes on the Isle of Wight to the way my kids are able to grasp a challenge like this, to the fact that it can be done on budget. And we will talk more about that because I do want to dig in a little bit more into that. But there are some things that we learned, more to come, and I'll link the video below if you're still wondering why on earth we did this.